When you are answering language paper 1 for the AQA GCSE English, question 3 will ask you about the structural features of a text and how the author has structured the text to interest the reader. So it's really important that you can remember what these structural features are and what it is that you're looking for in a text. The first thing that you need to think of is that when you're looking at structure, you're thinking about what the text is like overall. So this means that the structure is to do with the layout and the organisation of a text. When you're looking at these texts, then what you need to be looking for are asking yourselves what the text is like overall, whether you can spot any patterns in the text in terms of the structure, whether you can spot any patterns in terms of how the writer has chosen to organise the text, and you need to think about how the writer has organised that and ordered their ideas and information. So it's important that you note then some of the structural devices that you'll be looking for. So throughout the text you need to try and think about any openings and conclusions, headings and subheadings that might be in there. You need to try and think about if there's a change in focus. So you want to think when you're talking about change of focus is what the writer is talking about. So for instance, at the start of the text they might be describing the scenery and then move on later to talk about the actions of a character. That will be a change in focus. You need to try and think about the pace, so how fast or slow the text is, the time and place of the text, any repetition or patterns that emerge throughout the text. You need to try and think about things like paragraphing and things like sentence length. All of those are things that you need to try and look out for. So the next thing that we're going to do then is have a look at an example text. This is a short extract from the book Life of Pi. Inside the ship there were noises, deep structural groans. I stumbled and fell. No harm done. I got up. With the help of the handrails I went down the stairwell 4 steps at a time. I had gone down just 1 level when I saw water. Lots of water. It was blocking my way. It was surging from below, like a riotous crowd, raging, frothing and boiling. Stairs vanished into watery darkness. I couldn't believe my eyes. What was this water doing here? Where had it come from? I stood nailed to the spot, frightened and incredulous and ignorant of what I should do next. Down there was where my family was. I ran up the stairs. I got to the main deck. The weather wasn't entertaining any more. I was very afraid. Now it was plain and obvious. The ship was listing badly. And it wasn't level the other way either. There was a noticeable incline going from bow to stern. I looked overboard. The water didn't look to be 80 feet away. The ship was sinking. My mind could hardly conceive it. It was as unbelievable as the moon catching fire. One of the first things that you might notice when you're reading this text, and it's one thing that I've highlighted here, is that the author uses many short sentences throughout the text. Short sentences have quite a big impact on the reader because they emphasise the point that the sentence is making. So sentences such as the ship was sinking later on in this extract is stated as a single clause sentence to implore on the reader the severity of the situation and to drive home this turning point in the narrative. So the ship sinking is obviously a very big turning point in the narrative, so by having a short sentence here it's placing emphasis on that turning point and it's imploring and driving home that point for the reader. So it has quite a significant impact. Not only are there a lot of short sentences, but the author tends to vary the sentence length quite significantly throughout this whole extract. The use of short sentences such as lots of water and the ship was sinking, the use of these tend to speed up the pace of the text quite dramatically, especially if we look quite early on in this extract. We've got quite a few short sentences, so deep structural groans, I stumbled and fell, no harm done, I got up. The fact that there's those short sentences one after the other, this has a tendency to speed up the pace of the text and you read much quicker because they're so short and simple. At the same time though, the author is juxtaposing this with the use of longer sentences, which works to build tension in the text. So after this point here, it's saying lots of water, it was blocking my way, but then it's followed by It was surging from below by a riotous crowd, raging, frothing and boiling. That sentence is obviously much longer and a bit more detailed and descriptive, using lots of figurative language, so it's slowing the pace down again. This variation of sentence length makes the reader feel the suspense in the text, but it also makes you feel quite uneasy as a reader, jumping around from short sentences to long sentences and having this variation. Perhaps if you're going to look further into this, you might want to suggest that it's to mimic the unsteady atmosphere of the sinking ship, so to try and reflect that sort of unease and unsettled nature in the way that the text is written. That unsettled nature could also be spotted in the focus of the text, because the focus of the text changes quite frequently throughout. So I've highlighted here in the text two different themes that are played on by the text, two different focuses. So in this orange colour, we've got where the author is focusing on the boat and the surroundings and the scenery, and then in black I've left anywhere where the narrator is speaking in first person about himself and his actions. And the focus, you can see, jumps around quite a lot throughout this extract. The author is moving from one sentence to the next, focusing on the ship and then switching to the actions of the boy, back and forth throughout. And this, similarly to the way that the sentences were long and short, has quite an unsettling effect on the reader, since the text is constantly changing focus. So it's quite unsettling, and it also, similarly to the sentence length, replicates and mimics the fear that a young boy might have had in the reality of this shipwreck and this ship sinking. So if you're actually there, your thoughts might be shifting between your own safety and the events around you. And so the way that the author has structured this text in some way reflects the fear of the protagonist, and the reader gets to experience the fear of the protagonist with them. Okay, so just using that short extract, then we've managed to highlight three really significant things. We've had a look at the sentence lengths and the impact that that has on the reader. We've had a look at the pace and that impact on the reader. And we've also had a look at the change in focus and that impact on the reader. So even just with that short extract and looking at those 3 points, we've managed to come up with quite a detailed analysis of how the writer has structured the text to interest a reader.